Hey, what's up everybody? Alright, it's late o'clock, that's right, it's late o'clock. It's 9 o'clock at night. I got back from the warehouse and working and getting ready for Peru and coming to check in on these guys finally for the day. And we can see from basically a day and a half ago, this one has ick. And it doesn't seem to have spread to other goldfish. The healthy ones are still healthy and everything. But we have got a situation here. I leave for Peru, today is Tuesday. I leave for Peru on Sunday, so I've got a few days to oversee this. I've devised a plan. My plan is use salt and ICX. So I can use ICX until I go. Salt, I'll just leave in there. So my plan is this. I'm going to dose 1 dose of ICX. I'm also going to put salt in there. But first, I'm going to remove this crinum. And because there's ick in here, I can't move it to another tank that has fish, so it's going to go in a pond, and it's just going to have to sit there while I'm gone. Maybe my wife will move it to Ladybird's tank in the living room. That's up to her. But that's got to come out first. Then I can put a ridiculous amount of salt in here because I like to use basically a cup of salt per 20 gallons, or a tablespoon per gallon, maybe every 2 gallons, depends on how aggressive. Now I'm going to put it in at a heavy dose, knowing that I'm going to dial down auto water change so that it will change water slowly and leave the salt in there. Now I can see other signs of stress in these fish from the move that have presented themselves. The red in the fins, also a sign of stress. So that, basically all the new fish still stressed from the store to here, still stressed. So I'm gonna put a lot of salt in, and so I went to the warehouse, and we don't have enough salt to do this 800 gallon the way I want to do it and keep selling it to you guys. So if I had to go to Lowe's and I got the last bag of salt they had. Now I do not prefer this salt at all. It is not nearly as good as the Fritz salt that I would have preferred to use, but being that we've got 2 managers on vacation and I'm leaving, reordering Fritz salt in a timely manner would not happen. So I'm gonna wing it and use salt like this instead of the Fritz salt. And yeah, we're just gonna have to, because I gotta use 40 cups of salt in here. Got to change the water. I'm also gonna do a little bit of maintenance on the filtration. Probably show you guys that. I wanted to show or talk about and show the crinum here. So the crinum looked terrible in previous videos. Still doesn't look amazing, but when you look at plants, what you're really looking for, so we took this plant out of Murphy's tank at the shop and we moved it here. And because we uprooted all the roots, as you can see, if I zoom in slowest ever, down here where those fish are, 1, goldfish are nibbling on them. 2, they haven't sunk in and really started tapping into any of the fertilizer or fish poop in the substrate. When they did, they finally did, now you can see there's a bunch of new growth. You see all the green that's not covered in algae in that? That's all the brand new growth. So the plant is totally pushing forward. What I'm trying to explain, when you buy a crinum or any plant, you're gonna get that transition going. It's gonna come in, you're like, oh, it's looking terrible. And then finally it's gonna get its bearings and then go, oh man, here we go. And so unfortunately, I'm gonna move this plant again. So, we're gonna see this giant crinum probably melt back into one that's only, only about 18 inches tall instead of 3 feet tall. But that's just a necessary evil, and it's kind of made the decision for me of, what, I'll leave this relatively unplanted or just go with the Nubius so that I can use salt, because I still want to add quite a few goldfish in here, and things like this are bound to come up. Quarantine issues, all that kind of stuff. We could chime in on the other goldfish. If we come over here. Here we go. So they still look good. There's a little bit of red streaking in that fin, a little bit. So still settling in. That's just a stress sign on goldfish typically. And still cloudy because they're doing this all day long. And the water changes aren't, so what I don't want to do is I don't want to amp it up 1,000-fold like we talked about in the last video. It's slow, like it's better than the last video, and you probably can't see because all the reflecting in. Maybe if I turn the light off, it'll look a little better, but it is clearer than it was. Even just in 2 days, I think we've only had like 1 extra water change, right? So give it a 2-3 weeks, and then it might be the correct amount of water change. Also, we'll be taking some of these bigger goldfish out, and you can see while the water is not clean by any means, the sponge filter has helped, and the water changes have helped, and yeah, so, you know, just still trying to get ready. That's the big thing at this point, is getting ready. So I'm gonna go and work on the 800 gallon because that's the most pressing thing. And even though it's, you know, after 9 o'clock at night, you can see the sun has set basically outside. And yeah, what I was gonna explain is this is the hardest part of the job, by the way. Not just taking care of fish, but I'm doing the maintenance that I want to do, which I was hoping to do today, but we got busy. Basically, shipments landed that weren't supposed to land till tomorrow, blah, 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 right? I wanted to do all the maintenance earlier today, you know, like clean up the gravel line a little bit, service the sump, do all those things, right? Well, now it's 9 o'clock at night, and I have an option of either do it right now and then let the water clear up, and you're like, why are you so worried about the water? Well, tomorrow there's gonna be a live stream, and people tend to lose their minds. Like with that goldfish sitting down there for a minute, people will want me to address it. Is that goldfish alive? Is it okay? Is it gonna die, right? So we're trying to combat that. So, yep. And then if we have cloudy water again, it's going to you know, bring up questions. So if I do it tonight, this water will clear up more, and by tomorrow it'll look better. But I would much rather do salt and meds tonight, do a water change tomorrow, fix everything again, but the water won't look right for the live stream. So that's the part I don't enjoy, is having the hobby part, which this is my hobby, like I enjoy these goldfish and everything, having that, the schedule being dictated by the public, if you will. Like it's just a lot easier. Like right now, we're 7 minutes into filming, right? That 7 minutes, I already would have had the plant out, I would have had some salt in, and I would have done some things, like doing everything. I think that's what I realize when I see other YouTubers, but everything that is done on camera takes 2 to 3 times longer than if you were just to do it without filming. And so I can appreciate, like, wow, that aquascape took a long time, or that thing took a long time to do, because I know what it's like to do it. And so yeah, I'm gonna put the camera down and just get started. Might be minimal filming. I'll try and teach where I can here, but it's already late. I haven't had dinner yet, and I'm hoping to kind of wrap this up, get some dinner in me, and move forward with the night, because I've got work I gotta do. I gotta order stuff, so yeah, putting it down. All right, please pardon the sound and light. It's late, and lighting we don't have down the sump. I can see it on camera, you guys can see it a bit. But what I've done is I've replaced all the pads, the vertical pads there, which we do basically weekly. But what I think has happened is I've now removed like all the bio rings, and I'm making quick work so that way they don't completely dry out. One is fully submerged just in case. But now that I've removed everything, we have a layer of like sediment or mold. Now I personally like that. I actually believe I could just put the bio rings back on top of it and it would do its thing. But what I'm going to attempt to do is gravel vac that. And what I'm hoping is gravel vac into the third compartment where I have a second pump for the water changes. And that's the sound you might be hearing right now. It's pumping that water out. So that's why that chamber is relatively clean. And these ones aren't. I'm pumping the water in, which is coming from the water heater, unlimited amounts. Not that I'm putting a ton through, but my goal is to start hopefully siphoning water from here, or gravel vacuuming. And I'm going to try to put it into that third compartment and just trigger the pump so it stays on all the time. And then I could just get it all out, because it flows very slowly out into these buckets, which can be done. But if I can do that, I would do that service maybe, you know, once every couple months or something. Whereas this, I've never done this. This is all the sediment that's ever built up in this second chamber. And what happens is when I go out of town, all 4 pads get clogged up. Then eventually stuff starts coming over, and it'll settle eventually. Like it didn't look like nearly this much waste until I took out all the bio rings, and now it looks like a lot. You know, but the bio rings themselves, you know, look relatively clean. So I'm gonna start trying to tackle that, and we'll see what method worked. I haven't got any salt in or anything. We did get the crinum out, so we're that far at least. But yeah, and you can see without the filtration on, the goldfish keep digging, and so it gets cloudier. But we'll get it all cleared up, and hopefully before midnight. Well, my system didn't work going into the auto water change sump pump, so I had to put it down into a bucket, and I have a power head attached to a hose going out the door. Like, easy peasy. Just clearing this up a little bit more. Then I'm going to put all the buy rings back in. I'm going to start doing that actually once I turn the camera off. Buy rings back in, and then once it looks clear, we will go ahead and turn the return pump back on to the goldfish that lights out now. And then I'm going to add the salt and do all that. So it's now, what time is it? It's now 10:14. So yeah, well, I'm going to keep working on it. Getting close to, being done for the night. Still got to order plants and do all that kind of stuff, but this will be close enough for, getting the goldfish ready. So back to work. Alright, so it's cleared back up. Took, maybe 5-10 minutes. And right now what you're seeing is this is where the water comes into my sump, and it's really noisy, and that's because we have a gate valve that controls the first inlet. So there's one inlet that comes in below the water, and then there's a bypass that comes in above, Herbie drain style. Well, until it gets all the air out of the original line and creates a full siphon, it's extra loud. That being said, after, an hour or so, once it gets dialed in, it runs silent, which that's a good thing. So, yeah, so then water passes through here. If you guys haven't watched the video, we did a whole video on this. Water's gonna pass through here, layer, 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 infinite bio rings, crushed coral below that, and running underground filter under the crushed coral. So, now we're at the point where goldfish swimming around, lights are out, it's late. I have to add salt. This is a cup. I need to add, I like to use in the store, we developed 1 cup per 20 gallons of water, and that's a little bit more than a tablespoon per 2 gallons, right? Because a cup is 16 tablespoons, and so, well, hold on. It's a little less than a tablespoon per gallon, or a little, either way you want to say it, but basically it was a nice easy measure for the store, and it worked out really well. So, being that we have 800 gallons, and actually we have a little bit more because we have this sump and the sump behind it, so the sump behind it is an extra water reservoir. We're probably more around the 900 gallon range, but we're just going to treat it like it's 800, and that means 40 scoops of salt. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get these scoops of salt, which, by the way, this salt happens to be nice. Normally it comes in with a lot of contaminants and that kind of stuff, so yeah, I'm feeling okay about this salt. Still prefer Fritz. It's going to take a long time to dissolve this much salt doing it this way. But I'm just going to pour it in away from the intake. So that salt will sit down there, and the first salt will dissolve reasonably fast because it's not very salty in there. And that pump back there will eventually pump it up to the main floor. So I got to put 39 more scoops of those. And then I'm going to put Icex in here as well. So I'm just going to add all the salt, and then I'll chime in where the Icex is. So this is what 20 scoops of salt looks like so far. And I'm putting in so much salt, it forces me to check my math again, because I'm like, man, this is a lot of salt. But I don't think I've ever had to salt this tank before. I've had to salt Murphy's tank and Hank's tank at 360 gallons at the store, but that's just a lot of salt. It's gonna be most of this 40-pound bag. Well, not most, maybe 3/4 this 40-pound bag. So, I'm kind of just letting that dissolve in at the moment. I don't know if you guys can see the dissolving with the lower light, but all that's dissolving in, and it's getting pumped to the main display. I put a little bit over here to see how fast it would dissolve in comparison. And dissolving, so that's the thing, is this salt can dissolve pretty slowly because it's much bigger chunks. The finer the salt, the faster it dissolves, the better. The other thing is I like to add salt when I can to like the end chamber of a sump or something like that so that the fish don't eat it. I've never had a fish die from eating it, but when you start putting in, you know, if I'm gonna put in a giant sack of salt and let's say it was like that whole corner, I don't want them taking big mouthfuls and stuff like that, and so I just go with, well, let's dissolve it in slower. In a pinch, what you can do is you can dissolve it in a bucket, you know, put a few scoops in there, mix it, whisk it, and then pour it into your aquarium. But in a system like this, it's almost like doing like a pond, and you know, in a pond I would do it at the waterfall, that type of thing, so that it would get good distribution. And yeah, I also might tomorrow, which this vlog might continue till tomorrow, I might add in some more aeration once we put, you know, because we're putting meds in tonight and that kind of stuff. And knowing that I'm going to go heavier stocking on the goldfish, really want to see a lot of good aeration in there. So yeah, it's mostly waiting a little bit. And I guess I could put the Icex in now. Just have to get set up for that. So give me a moment. Alright, well, I've got my handy dandy aquarium co-op measure, and the max it goes to is 30 milliliters. Well, 30 milliliters is not nearly enough. In fact, the entire bottle only treats 960 gallons, and we're going to treat 800 gallons. And my advice is always go a little bit under if you're unsure. Like, this is probably 900 gallons, but we've got, you know, you don't factor it in like they already factored in, but there's substrate, there's media, all that kind of stuff plays in. But in general, there's a big range. So maybe that whole bottle will treat 960 gallons, but at 800 gallons, if I dump the whole bottle in, it's a little more potent. At 1,000 gallons, a little less potent. The reality is, with the salt we're using, and it's not even that bad of a case of ick, and it also fights fungal, like, we're just going to treat it to 800. It seems to always work dosing just as it is for me. The other thing I'll point out, if this med was to not be allowed anymore, I would use salt. I'm using them in combination because I believe they work better together for me. But yeah, so it's going to be 13 and a half of these, you know, basically shot glasses, and I poured it in at the beginning just like this, and it's going to turn the water blue. Now, people ask all the time, does it stain silicone and that kind of stuff? The answer is it'll stain this glass. It will stain silicone, but it doesn't stain acrylic. So that's another perk about acrylic that I like. It'll stain, by the way, it really stains your skin and your clothes, so don't get it on you. And I'm going to go ahead and do 12 and a half more of those while more salt dissolves, and then I'll put more salt in. So there we go. Well, there's some proof that stains stuff blue. That was just from dumping it in, and then there's a little bit on the lip that would run down and hit my hand. So now for a couple days, you know, the shower will take it off, but I'll have blue in my hand. And that's kind of something you could kind of notice if you're at a fish store. If there's blue on hands, that means there's sick fish around. You almost put two and two together and be like, oh, where's the methylene blue / Icex going? And that kind of stuff. But you can see down here, we've turned the water blue for the most part. What's kind of cool is you can watch the blueness of the water tint things, and you can see how well your filtration's working, like if it's actually pulling it all the way down to the bottom or isn't it. And you can also, like, we dosed it all down here. If the light was on, I've been able to see how long does it take for all the water up here to turn blue. So you can get a visual representation of your aquarium circulation, that stuff. So the salt down here has gone down quite a bit. You know, it was like way up here, now it's getting down low. So I'm going to put the other 20 scoops, and off camera I'm going to double check and make sure my math is correct again, because I'm apprehensive of that much salt, just because it's physically a lot, and I haven't done it before in this tank. But I've done the math twice. You know, do it a third time, because we don't want to kill a bunch of fish. That would be horrible based on a miscalculation. So, alright, I want to finish up for tonight, and I want to talk about basically, I was talking to the rep from API, and they were talking about how when they use meds in their fish room and everything, and they wish more people would talk about the effects of the meds. And so I thought that'd be a good thing to talk about right now. So obviously we have Icex, which is by Hikari, not API, but hey, whatever. And we have salt. Now, we've put basically all these meds, if you will, in the water. That's gonna have an adverse reaction for things like usually medicine and salt and that kind of stuff will change water. What I mean by that is, so by adding more salt in, changes the density of the water. By adding meds, a lot of times it'll change the viscosity, so it might feel a little more sticky. You might get more bubbles on the top of the water, right? So over here, let me move some of these buckets out of the way. We've got this foam accumulating. Now this is from the salt. Now anyone from the saltwater world knows, like, wow, this looks a lot like skimmate or skimmate from a protein skimmer. This salt in here right now is probably more like saltwater levels, and so when we change the specific gravity of salt or of water, it will have bubbles not pop as fast. You can get this foam going on. Same you'll see at a river or the ocean, where basically poop and that kind of stuff builds up proteins and the salt. You get this foam, and that's what we've got going on right here. So you notice it's there, and not so much over here or anything. It is only on this end. So that's just something to know. And as far as fish goes, it's likely for them to be pouty. And so what I mean by that, they might be more shy, they might not want to eat. I typically don't feed very much at all when they're getting meds. I know there's ridiculous glare from my computer screens from the live stream setup, but you know, so something like that, that's not, I wouldn't be scared of that. I go, yeah, they're sick. The same thing. What do? When I'm horribly sick, I go lay in bed and I try not to do anything. Just try to recuperate. And that's what these fish are going to do. So yeah, I'm not too worried. And we'll chime in tomorrow and at least get you, did they make it through the night, which they will. Did they, you know, is the water will be clear by then, because the ICX doesn't stay blue even though it stays active in the water for 24 hours. It doesn't stay blue for 24 hours. The salt will have finished dissolving, and you know, we'll see if we get into anything else. So, all right, that's my 11 o'clock. I guess to be fair, I can see in the reflection it's only 10:59 in 1 second. But, you know, give it a like if you watched this far and you've ever had to do late night water changes and med fixes on fish. You know what it's like. And we'll tune that valve if it doesn't quiet down by tomorrow morning. I'm going to leave everything open so I can walk in early in the day before I go do business stuff and just make sure everything's looking good down here, because we did quite an overhaul down there. And yeah, I'll leave it open. If it looks good, we'll close it up. And there we go. Alright, so next day, water, I don't know if it's super clear or clearer, but it's a little bit clearer for sure. Which will probably be good over the next few days. Looking at the first pad, we're starting to get some bypass. So I don't know if you guys can see that, but the water level's right here, and then the pad, and then the water level drops, right? So what that means is this pad is completely full and used, and I'll say completely full in that it's bypassing it, but this will collect more stuff. But for right now, being that I'm trying to clear the water, so I'm at a quandary. If I remove that pad, it'll cloud the water a little bit more for the live stream, but if I don't do it today, maybe I'll forget. So I'm probably just going to do it and deal with the live stream, hey, your water's cloudy type of thing. That's fine. We still have some bypass going on. So that means I'm going to tune the flow a bit. So we're getting all these extra bubbles, which that's the meds in the water, but the bubbles that are coming out, I don't know if you guys can see that down there, that is from the second Herbie flow. So what is a Herbie flow? I haven't talked about that in probably over a year. So there's two drains. There's one drain right there that just drops straight down, and that one's got a valve, so it is meant to siphon and be silent. Up top here, we have another drain. The problem with that is, it is taking on way too much water. It's supposed to trickle through there. So I'm gonna adjust that and get it to run a little more silent. So that, you know, that's that. And then all the salt did dissolve, so now I just have cleanup to do for the live stream, because all this stuff will show on the live stream, and, you know, in general, that's not professional. And all the salt has now dissolved, which is good. So that's, you know, this is in a state of ready to sit this way, essentially, if I had to leave tomorrow. Now, I don't have to leave tomorrow. When you're watching this, obviously it'll be at a different time, but I've got a few more days to deal with it. You know, this guy's looking worse, and that's quite often what happens is a goldfish or any fish will look worse before they get better. And with ick, you know, a lot of times people are like, oh, but the meds aren't working yet, I can still see ick. Well, the thing you need to know is it has to hatch off the body, drop into the gravel, sit there for a day or two, and then hatch out and reattach. The only point in which you can attack ick is the reattach point. So while there's a ton of ick on that goldfish, the salt and the meds don't do anything to it until it drops off and hatches. So we're probably 3 or 4 days out of me being able to go like, wow, look, yeah, all the ick is gone. Like, it's gonna take some time. So the goal is to stop the ick from coming back onto the fish, and you can't really, I can turn the heat up, but that's not good for goldfish, so I can't really speed up ick coming off of the fish. But that's just what you have to deal with. And ick, so one thing we're going to talk about someday is ick is the most misdiagnosed thing, because I think hobbyists just go, my fish is sick, and they think of it as ick. Like, oh, they've got some kind of crud, right? You know, you might say if you're not feeling well, like, oh, I picked up some kind of crud from the airplane. Same thing in fish. A lot of times people just go, oh, I have, you know, I picked up ick. Well, it's not just ick. Like, in this fish, it doesn't have ick currently, but it has some stress, like fungal infections, which the salt is going to help with that. And when you see, I won't call these listless fish, because they're still swimming around, but for the most part, you can clearly see this fish, the fish that were in here, are more vibrant and robust. Like that one, and that one, they're alert, right? They're kind of like, hey, we're ready to eat, what's up, let's do this. Whereas the new fish are just like, well, I'm here and I'm alive, but, you know, I'm not feeling so hot. And when you're in tune with your fish, you should be able to witness this happening a lot sooner. So like, if I would be worried if like the day on the live stream, if these fish were acting like that, but it had been 2 weeks since I moved them, I'd be like, ooh, they're coming down with something. Whereas they're doing their normal goldfish thing right now, like, oh, they're doing okay. They're actually not being too impacted by the salt or anything like that. Like, those are all good things. So yeah, we're gonna basically clear that up, and you know, there's still lots of meds to go through this tank, and I don't want to call it like lots of meds, like, oh man, I'm just gonna do it, but you know, eventually we're going to deworm a couple more times, and a lot of people have been asking me about that. I'm going to do a dedicated video, but deworming, kind of like ick, where ick we could only attack it when it was free floating and attaching to the fish, like when it's swimming in the water and looking for a goldfish, that's when we can kill it. Well, kind of the same thing with internal tapeworms. We can only attack an internal tapeworm when it's in the fish and active and feeding on the fish, right? But tapeworms, they live inside the fish, then they lay eggs, and they come out in the poop, and they get eaten by other fish, they go into other fish, so when they're in an egg form, the medicine can't attack the eggs. It can only attack the live tapeworms. So, we medicate, we kill all the live tapeworms, they have a week where they're not feeling so well, and then 3 or 4 weeks later, all those eggs that were inside the fish from the tapeworms have now hatched. Well, those ones are now live and thriving, and so we need to redose to kill them. And that's that whole thing that I haven't gone over well enough. Like, it gets dropped in, you know, some daily doses and that kind of stuff here and there, but it's not wide common knowledge. And so I want to do a dedicated video on, you know, either General Cure or Prozi Pro. Same thing with, you know, Prozi Pro. Like, I tend to call meds by their name, the ones I like to use, but the reality is a dewormer, whether it's levamisole, fenbendazole, General Cure, praziquantel, metronidazole. Most people have a hard time remembering those medicines, like the fancier Latin names, or I don't know if they're actually Latin names, but the, you know, the scientific name. So I go with the common name. So, all right, that's gonna wrap this up. I gotta get ready for the live stream, and I'll see what else I can get done. Dean's supposed to come over, and we do some talking before we go to Peru. So hopefully I can fit that in, and you know, you won't be seeing this right before a live stream at any time, but thanks for showing up to the live streams. I appreciate you guys getting there like an hour early. If you watched all the way till here, hit that like button, Give it a share if you want someone to watch about goldfish. And then if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button. I mean, if you made it this long, when's the last time you watched this much stuff on YouTube in a row from one content creator? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, even the notifications at this point, and hopefully you're enjoying the vlog.